beautiful homemakers. I am reading the original 1922 Fascinating Womanhood pamphlets. We're in pamphlet number 4, chapter 8, Revealing Your Real Self. And I want to put a word in there, revealing your real feminine self, because that's what they're talking about. Now that we understand the nature of femininity, let us see what can be done toward putting the quality into you. And if this is your first video, you need to go to the playlist and get caught up. As explained before, it is not a quality foreign to your personality. If it seems so, its seeming unnaturalness is due merely to the persistence with which it has been suppressed. And you suppress it because we live in a society of women that have been suppressing it. And that reminds me of a quote by Phyllis Schlafly. The feminist movement is just not compatible with happiness. They aren't for equality. They want to kill everything masculine. And that is why 80% of women say they are not feminists, because we really like men. The feminist movement has always wanted to obliterate both masculinity and femininity, but feminine women like to receive help from men. Superior wives that we talked about a few videos ago, they don't. They are constantly stepping into their masculine traits, and men find that very unbecoming. So the more you're stepping into boss mode, the more the man is retreating. And the more masculine energy that you have, the more he's actually going to step back and receive. Which is great if he's sick, but otherwise it becomes a burden on him and you turn into a superior wife that he feels he can never please, so why bother trying? So back to revealing your real self. If some big, masterful, and overpowering man should come along and make you realize in spite of yourself what a tender creature a woman is compared with such a man, you could, and you would, betray just as much femininity as any other woman. Obviously, they're talking to women who say, I don't fit that feminine model. And we are working on learning to develop that. That's what they're talking about. So, when you find yourself in the presence of a really masculine man that you admire, your latent feminine instincts begin to come out. The difficulty with you has been that you have never met a man who makes you realize your frail femininity in this way. You are perhaps the type of woman who requires an exceptionally forceful man to arouse her latent tenderness. The kind of women who are most universally attractive, on the contrary, are the kind who look upon any and all men as big, strong, and masterful, who realize their frail femininity in the presence of every man, whether he is exceptionally virulent or not, and whose actions constantly show their consciousness of the contrast between their own tenderness and the man's strength. Your task, therefore, if you would be universally attractive, is to learn to do as she does. Betray your femininity, not only in the presence of an exceptionally admirable man whom you may never meet, but in the presence of any and all men. And when I first learned about this a few years ago, I just began practicing. And so one way I have practiced is by always commenting on the strength of any man who helps me. So when our cat food is delivered, I rush to the door, say thank you, and then I just stare at that big box. And 9 out of 10 times the man will turn around, even if he's already back on the truck, and ask me if I want him to put it in the house. And I always do and say, I'm always amazed at how strong men are. When I had my dryer delivered, I had the gate open to the backyard, I wore a very pretty house dress, and I waited in the driveway because I knew that their orders were to leave it in front of the house. I didn't want it in the front of the house. I wanted it in my backyard, not in the garage, but, put away because I knew my husband wouldn't be able to install it for a few days. So not only did I just lead the men to the backyard, I then commented on their strength and wondered out loud how I was going to get that box off. "Oh, do you want me to take it out of the box for you?" "Would you please? I'd so appreciate that. I wouldn't have any idea of how to do that. Can I get you men some cold water?" And when I drop off a big box at charity, I always tell the man that the box in the trunk is too heavy for me to lift, but I'm sure he'll find it light as a feather. So you know what I'm going to say. Practice, ladies. So back to the book. There are, of course, women who will ridicule the assumption that men are stronger, abler, or more courageous than themselves, who will refuse to concede any superiority whatever to the other sex. Yet when such women finally are attracted to a man, it is because, in their opinion, he has the very superiority they have been ridiculing. And if they arouse a mutual attraction in the man, it is because, to him, if not to others, this woman has shown that in the presence of his superior boldness and forcefulness, they also feel too tender, too weak, too trustful, too much woman. And of course, many people will want to take that out of context and say, "I don't want a forceful man." But admit it, you don't want a man you can walk all over. You don't want a man who doesn't have opinions. Yes, you want to be able to talk to him. Of course you're not looking for an abusing man. You're looking for a quality man. I know that. They know that. So don't take this out of context. No matter how incongruous the outward appearances, whenever a man is fascinated by a woman, you may rest assured that he is sensible of the contrast between her tenderness and delicacy and his chivalrous strength and courage. And that is why you can be over 6 foot tall and have a man call you his little girl, because it's not about size, it's about how you act in his presence. And this even accounts for the fact that when a man rescues a woman, sometimes he will have feelings for her, and the woman being rescued will have feelings for him. It's really not just a Hollywood storyline. It does happen in real life. I've known people that that's happened to, being rescued out in the wilderness. In fact, I just remembered that Grace Livingston Hill has a book about that subject. I believe it's called The Girl in the Woods. Now let's move on to the next section called How to Emphasize Your Girlishness. Before we offer our detailed suggestions for putting femininity into your manner, we want it thoroughly understood that these suggestions that will be coming in the next video are to supplement those in the last chapter, not to supplant them. You are to make yourself somebody's darling. You are to endeavor to make every man you meet wish to help you. And you are to study and imitate those exceptionally adorable girls who have the air of being accustomed to being waited upon. You are constantly to bring out and emphasize the contrast between your tenderness and the man's strength. You are to intimate, by action and word, how much you, as a frail woman, must depend upon the power and bravery of man. You are to observe the women, wherever you find them, who have the quality of femininity. You are to watch their actions, their dress, and their conversation. And you are to practice every trick of manner, voice, dress, and action which you have observed in these cuddlesome creatures. Finally, this observation and practice is to be incessant. In Chapter 7 there are enough suggestions, if assiduously followed, to keep you busy for months. Don't imagine that the reading of this work will take the place of this personal observation and practice. It is impossible for us to describe adequately the tricks of manner and the other subtle means by which a feminine woman displays her femininity. If you were before us, we might show them to you with aid of living models. But without such living models, neither language nor art can give you the understanding of these matters that your own observation, with the guidance of this book, can give you. So when you've first heard of some of these things, some of it will seem very foreign to you. But then you will begin to recognize it. And just like in the last video, when I read to you Why Men Don't Call Women Back, I had read that book a long time ago and didn't catch all the FW topics in there because I wasn't familiar with it, right? It didn't resonate with me. But then after studying FW and then flipping through the book, I was like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what FW teaches. We have made femininity sufficiently clear for you to recognize it when you see it. You can, if you do not trust your own perceptions, confirm them by finding out whether the girl, who in your opinion is exceptionally feminine, attracts great numbers of men. If she does, you may rest assured that she is worthy of being one of your models of femininity. Except in this day and age, it might backfire. They might just want her for the night and not for a lifetime. So you need to be careful. Find a number of such models, watch them act, until you are familiar with the little tricks and devices by which they emphasize their femininity, by which they contrast their tenderness with the strength of men, and by which they reduce the men to doting slavishness. Then practice these tricks, first, if you desire, in privacy, and before a mirror, then upon the men in your own family, then upon a few acquaintances and friends, and finally, when you are sure of mastery, upon any and all men. You will find that men are very susceptible to these artifices when properly used, and that they are not nearly so difficult to attract as you suspected. I also just realized in the 1935 version, this chapter is called How to Emphasize Your Charm and Femininity, whereas in the original pamphlet it says How to Emphasize Your Girlishness. I'm afraid this is going to be a short video because the next section is so long and I want to keep it all together. So I'll say bye now. Bye!